the main venue where it seems a handful of protesters have gathered. Let's continue trying to speak about where we are and what the way forward looks like. Bring in our guest here at our makeshift studio, Xolelwa Kashe-Katiya, who is speaking to us in a capacity as a political analyst, but of course wears so many other hats. Xolelwa, it's lovely to see you. Thanks very much indeed for popping by here at the SABC News channel. So we have seen, let's call it, the first few moments of this thing that many of us are still imagining in many ways. And I wonder what your initial impressions are of how things have fared so far.
Good morning and thank you for having us. I think my first impressions, as I think the viewers at home have also seen, I think there was a bit of an interruption because there was a medical emergency. But for me it was striking at how the delegates themselves forced the program to stop, which I think was quite indicative of the tone. And then we saw how people started singing, struggle songs. And if you look around, the kind of mood and that kind of posture is not something that you would expect in this kind of platform where you've got all these eminent persons, so to speak, and presidents and so on. But to have the delegates themselves having the ability to put a stop and attend to that medical emergency. So I think for me that was very encouraging as just the start.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because one of the co-MCs then came up to say that this is the South Africa she knows. I suppose really appealing to the feeling of patriotism, perhaps of the kind of unity, let's face it, that we're going to need if in fact we're going to pull this off.
Exactly, because you have a fellow South African who's having an issue there, and how can we proceed with the program because we are pressed against time. So for us, I think that solidarity is kind of like a metaphor for what we're hoping will come out of this, they're calling it an opening ceremony for a year-long process of having conversations as society. Hopefully that spirit will continue even when it goes to ward level. We do hope so.
Yeah, I can't help but pick up your tone as you say that. It's loaded. Is that realistic? I mean, is that what we need? Is that the answer for the melee of problems that we're dealing with in the country? These multi-layered conversations really, which, let's face it, aren't the solution, even though they're being branded as the vehicle that will get us to the solution.
I think for us, what we've been punting as Ayanda Nyathi is that this is long overdue. We've been calling for a national dialogue since inception of Ayanda Nyathi as a scenario. That was back in 2018.
Yeah.
And this is because we were also reading, like you and I, everybody else, everyone is saying that we are aware of what the challenges are, and the list is getting longer. This is a project that was supposed to have started back in 1995. After the whole constitutional making process, after the TRC, after CODESA, we understood that because of the trauma that we came out of, and also the sheer diversity of the nation that we're trying to form, there had to be a platform for dialogue, and that was supposed to be something that is driven by the NEDLEC. And we see now, 30 years later, NEDLEC rising to the occasion to actually take on that function, because for a very long time we saw NEDLEC focusing on labor issues. It became a bargaining council where you had organized labor and business dominating that space, whereas at the same time they were leaving the rest of society behind. And all the other administrations after 1994 have not paid attention to this, to compel the NEDLEC to be that platform for us to find each other, especially after the end of apartheid. Now 30 years on, we're starting to find that this is important when we should have done it a long time ago.
Is it a little too late, or better late than never?
I think it's better late than never. I think that's why the people that I hear today are here. It's the sense that I get, it's not necessarily about now all of a sudden there's trust in the state, because there is a huge trust deficit that exists. However, I think South Africans do believe that there is a need to find each other, because we've seen how our differences have led us down a rabbit hole. I mean, we've seen South Africans going to other countries to seek to be heard. We see South Africans every day burning tires so that they can create that smoke that calls, and so that there can be attention brought to their challenges. But now we have an opportunity to actually ventilate all those challenges. But because we're so different, it will end up being a long list. So I think the idea is to actually find a mechanism to prioritize where we all can agree, because there's going to be difference, but there has to be areas where we agree as South Africans.
Yeah, one almost gets the sense that those who are backing this see this as some kind of silver bullet, and it can't be that, Xolelwa. I don't see it as it having the ability to sort out all these problems, and I don't know if there's any one event that can do that.
It's obviously not going to be an event. It has to be a very long-term project. I mean, even my own personal criticism of this project is that a year is not sufficient to have this dialogue, especially since it's happening 30 years later. So a lot of challenges have emerged. There's new challenges that have emerged. So even a platform such as NEDLAC, it was formed with an understanding of the history that we had of the labor movement. But now the world of work has changed. There's technology, there's the informal sector. So is it still relevant how NEDLAC operates? Had they done this work from the onset, NEDLAC would have been able to adjust itself to evolve as society evolves. Now there has to be a lot of catching up to be done. And I think we'll have to see if this process unfolds in the correct manner, in a manner that is inclusive, that is meaningful, and that citizens' concerns and priorities are heard, and that they actually get elevated, so that when the process ends next year and it goes to Parliament, everything that has been collected from the ground actually finds resonance in that space. And maybe that's how we can forge a social compact. But whether it will be a success or not, it depends on how this whole thing is implemented.
Yeah, and the term social compact is certainly top of mind for many of us who have listened to the commentary, have watched the narrative over the years, and I suppose have seen how we've gotten here. Indlu Lamiti is known for the scenarios. Help us take stock of what really is at stake here.
A lot is at stake, and that's the unfortunate part. And I think for us, for a while now, we've been trying to raise the red flags, and they've been ignored time and time again. We thought the process of telling the stories would actually frighten us so much that we would start to act, it would trigger action. But we have not seen that. And I mean, if you look at the new scenarios right now, we are looking at a Hadida nation, which is a very noisy democracy with kinds of coalitions that are being formed, but they don't necessarily agree with each other. And as a result, nothing ever gets done except for blaming each other, blaming history, blaming the foreigners. And the noise just keeps getting louder and louder, like the Hadidas. Then we have another scenario, which is the vulture culture. Now, this one is the scary one, because then what you see in the vulture culture, you see a nation that is cannibalizing itself, where you have criminal syndicates that then seize the opportunity because the state is incapable of delivering even the most basic services. And we're seeing signals of that with the construction mafia and so on. And also you can even refer to Jerome Kwanazi's pronouncement that this is an indication of perhaps a vulture culture emerging. The one that the president likes so much, which is the weaver work, is the more difficult one, because to get to us, according to that scenario, to get to us finding each other, it happens after a rupture. A revolution of sorts has to happen, and everything collapses, and then we build again. Gosh. So you can see that all three are a bit scary.
It's definitely a tough pill to swallow as we take in those different species of birds, which I imagine have helped us conceptualize what's really at stake. But I'm keeping a close eye, Xolelwa, on what's also taking place inside the main auditorium, and it seems that we're about to continue with the proceedings for the day in the lead up to President Cyril Ramaphosa's keynote address.